Tomorrow and more widespread showers, both today and tomorrow. Gosh, only in the low 60s. I'm Cairo 7 pinpoint meteorologist Nick Allard.
It is partly sunny and 60 degrees in downtown Seattle. I'm Ursula Royteen.
Subscribe to us on YouTube for our can't miss clips. Cairo Radio 97.3 FM. News and talk, powered by the Pacific Northwest.
The Big Lead is brought to you by 3010 Weight Loss for Life.
The Dory Monson Show on Cairo Radio. This is The Big Lead.
I have really had fun putting today's show together. Just an awful lot of fun as we will commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day and get you covered on all the other news that's going on around here. Welcome to the big show, coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio, streaming on Facebook Live. You know, I fell in love with radio when I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. And I've told the story often that when we had the Seattle Pilots for 1 year, I was 7 years old that summer, and I'd sit in my treehouse and I'd keep score of the baseball games. And then we lost the Pilots after 1 year. So I'd have to listen to minor league baseball, and there was a team in Tacoma, and I would always look to see when they had a doubleheader at Hawaii, because those games would go, the second game would go till 3 a.m., so I'd get permission to sleep out in the yard.
That's the cutest thing. With
a radio. And I didn't know any of the players. I didn't know the team. I couldn't care less. I loved listening to the radio to a baseball game that was coming from across the Pacific Ocean. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to, for about a half hour, between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, we're going to take people back 75 years ago today and go through a lot of the CBS radio broadcast on D-Day. And I hope people, you know, if you love radio, or if you just tolerate me between noon and 3, I'm hoping that I can just take people back to what it must have been like when almost everybody in the country had a loved one who was fighting in the war. It looked pretty hopeless.
Right.
On June 6th of 44, and we launched the most audacious mission maybe in the history of combat. And for people at home, because there were these false messages that the U.S. military was sending out to the Nazis, so they were hoping that they would think we were landing somewhere else and on a different day, and Roosevelt delayed it, or I think it was Eisenhower, delayed it a day because of weather. And I'm trying to imagine what it'd be like pre-television to just sit by a radio and wait for news that was going to save the world or end the world as we knew it.
To have one thing that is your single focus.
Yes.
It's hard to imagine today.
Something that galvanizing.
Yeah.
So we, between 12:30 and 1 o'clock today, we're going to take you back because CBS was the most dominant radio network at the time, and their coverage was, Edward R. Murrow appears in some of this coverage, and we'll do that between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. And then at the end of the show, listen in the final segment in the 2 o'clock hour, a 90-year-old D-Day veteran, and I know you're thinking, what, he was 15 when he served? Yes, he served on a British tugboat, which was the only service you could do at age 15. They waived the 16-year-old requirement if you served on a tugboat. But he was on a tugboat at D-Day. Have you heard this yet? This 90-year-old recorded a song?
No, I thought you were going to talk. No.
Oh, my goodness. He recorded a song called The Shores of Normandy. He's 90 years old. It's the sweetest thing. So we're going to play that at the end of the show. Oh, my goodness gracious.
No, I shared the story yesterday about the D-Day survivor who parachuted in to Normandy.
Yeah.
Yesterday, which was like,
yeah,
what?
The 97-year-old. Yes. And, my dad was a paratrooper at Normandy. And I never once talked to him about it. Oh. Never once. And I didn't care. I didn't, we had no relationship really. So, and I didn't appreciate, and I've talked about this often, the turning point for me was when I saw Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
Yeah, where you were just taken into the moment, and these were average age, 21. These were 21-year-old kids.
That's my oldest son
right
now.
These were
Can't
kids.
imagine.
And they knew they were going to die, many of them. And they were on these landing craft just racing into the oncoming gunfire, willing to sacrifice, to give their life to save the world, literally, to save the world. And, man, it's just a level of selflessness that is almost impossible to imagine these days, except in our military. I still believe those who serve today are the bravest among us and the most selfless among us. So we are going to do a lot of that today, but we've got a lot of other news that we're going to talk about as well. But we will start with D-Day here in The Big Lead.
The Big Lead. Top story.
I'll tell you what, this was amazing, but Jim Acosta on CNN, Scarborough on MSNBC, they have the biggest critics of the president were praising his speech early today to mark the 75th anniversary of D-Day, that it was the greatest speech of his presidency. It really was something. It was beautiful. And he told the stories of some of the survivors who were there at the speech, like this man.
Not for control and domination, but for liberty, democracy, and self-rule. They pressed on for love and home and country, the main streets, the schoolyards, the churches, and neighbors, the families and communities that gave us men such as these. They were sustained by the confidence that America can do anything because we are a noble nation with a virtuous people praying to a righteous God. The exceptional might came from a truly exceptional spirit.
And there was a lot in that was reminiscent of FDR's prayer to the nation 75 years ago. And I'll share a lot of that with you coming up in the final segment today. But he told the story of Ray Lambert, a sergeant on D-Day.
One of those men in Taylor's 16th Regiment was Army medic Ray Lambert. Ray was only 23, but he had already earned 3 Purple Hearts and 2 Silver Stars fighting in North Africa and Sicily, where he and his brother Bill, no longer with us, served side by side. In the early morning hours, the 2 brothers stood together on the deck of the USS Henrico before boarding 2 separate Higgins landing craft. If I don't make it, Bill said, please, please, take care of my family. Ray asked his brother to do the same. Of the 31 men on Ray's landing craft, only Ray and 6 others made it to the beach. There were only a few of them left. They came to the sector right here below us. Easy Red, it was called. Again and again, Ray ran back into the water. He dragged out one man after another. He was shot through the arm. His leg was ripped open by shrapnel. His back was broken. He nearly drowned. He had been on the beach for hours, bleeding and saving lives, when he finally lost consciousness. He woke up the next day on a cot beside another badly wounded soldier. He looked over and saw his brother Bill. They made it. They made it. They made it. At 98 years old, Ray is here with us today with his 4th Purple Heart and his 3rd Silver Star from Omaha. Ray, the free world salutes you.
And then everyone there rose to give a standing ovation to this man who's now 98.
These men ran through the fires of hell, moved by a force no weapon could destroy. the fierce patriotism of a free, proud, and sovereign people.
Whew. That story brings tears to my eyes. It really does. And the president assured them that their sacrifice will never be forgotten.
Your legend will never die. Your spirit, brave, unyielding, and true, will never die. The blood that they spilled, the tears that they shed, the lives that they gave, the sacrifice that they made, did not just win a battle. It did not just win a war. Those who fought here won a future for our nation. They won the survival of our civilization. And they showed us the way to love, cherish, and defend our way of life for many centuries to come.
Yeah, it was unquestionably the best speech of Trump's presidency. And it was just very moving to watch the ceremonies at Normandy early today. And as I said, between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, I'm going to take you back 75 years. And have you just imagined what it'd be like to be here in America, listening to the radio, trying to find out what's happening on the momentous day that saved the world. Okay, we've got a lot of other news we're going to talk about today as well. Up next in the Big Lead.
The Big Lead, Big Local.
Every afternoon as I drive home, I get sad for about the last, 2-3 weeks. Because as you're driving north on I-5, right as you pass Northgate, 130th, all of a sudden, what used to be beautiful, tall trees, they're all cut down. And now they've extended the cutting north of Seattle into Mountain Lake Terrace, and they're going up to Linwood. But they're taking down thousands and thousands of beautiful, old, tall trees. And it was one of those, you don't realize what you got till it's gone. Because for my entire life, I've taken those trees for granted. But now that they're gone, what used to be beautiful trees, now you just see buildings on the other side. But as you are between 130th and 145th, there is a golf course, Jackson Golf Course, that you see. But Sound Transit is tearing down all these trees, those eco-terrorists at Sound Transit. They're tearing down all the trees so that they can put a big concrete track that is the biggest waste of money of any public project in the history of the United States. But that's not the only way the left that is in control around here wants to destroy greenscape. I mean, it's amazing because the left always pretends to be the philosophy of nature and for the planet. And they're always talking about climate change, but whacking down 5,500 trees so developers can get rich along the Sound Transit line. Yeah, we'll do that. Absolutely. Now there's another battleground. I've had a lot of listeners who have been reaching out to me for weeks now because, and I'll tell you one other quick story. When I was a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid at Ballard High School, they had a deal with the Seattle public golf courses. If you had a Seattle student card, you could play a round of golf at Jackson, Jefferson, West Seattle. You could play a round of golf for $2.50. And so golf, which was the sport of the elite and something that I'd never reasonably could have aspired to play given my financial situation, it all of a sudden was within reach. I remember one summer day, my buddy Mark and I got to Jackson at about 6:30, played 18 holes, went into the clubhouse, got a hot dog, then we went out and played 18 more. Then we went home and we were playing one-on-one basketball in his driveway. And it's about 5 o'clock, but it was on a long summer day. And I said, You want to go play another 18? We played 54 holes in one day. It was awesome. And now the golf courses might go away because of Seattle politics. And this is what a bunch of listeners have been warning me about, but the city of Seattle has commissioned a study to look at the future of the golf courses in the city, the public golf courses. The only public golf in Seattle are the city-owned courses. And one of the things they're looking at would be tearing up the golf courses to put in affordable housing. Now, why would they even consider this? Jenny Durkin, she told the Seattle Times, it would be a breach of our duty to the people of Seattle not to be really looking at what is the best use of those golf courses. From everything to continuing as golf courses, to finding out a way to use part of them as parks, to using part of them for affordable housing. So, why in the world would they tear up the green space that we have? And I mean, I know some senior citizens who play at Jefferson Park. I mean, every golf course has a bunch of senior citizens, but I know some senior citizens who get out there at Jefferson twice a week, like clockwork, year-round. Doesn't matter what the weather is. And they might tear up the golf courses for affordable housing in Seattle. They might take out the green space. Why would they even consider that? Because I know the answer. Because golf is considered to be a sport that is played predominantly by white males. And there are few creatures on earth more loathsome to leftist politicians than white males. And if they have a choice between tearing up the golf courses to build low-income housing or continuing in a sport that caters to the most vile human beings among us, I will not be surprised at all if they reach the conclusion that they need to tear up at least one or two of those golf courses to build some low-income housing. Politics in Seattle. Ain't it grand? Between the trees for Sound Transit, the golf courses, the one-party government that rules around here, they are the biggest eco-terrorists in the world. And that is your big lead for today.
The Big Lead on Cairo Radio.
Ursula's going to check the news, and then we're going to take you back 75 years. What was it like sitting by your radio, waiting to hear if America was going to save the world? That's next on the Dori Monson Show.
This hour of the Dori Monson Show is brought to you by Insulation Northwest.